About a month ago, I made a video ranking every single Hollow Knight boss battle from easiest to hardest. You can check the video out by clicking on the tab above, but today we are ranking every single Silksong boss from easiest to hardest. Now, the way I am judging these bosses is based on my initial fight with that boss. For instance, there's no way to replay the bosses and see how they are a second time after I've already beat them, so it's going to be based on where I was in the game and how it happened when I fought it. Now, at the top right of your screen will be included a death counter letting you know at the beginning of each of the bosses that I talk about how many times I died to that boss. It won't be directly influenced to how hard I think the boss is, because sometimes I did just get lucky or performed really well on a very difficult boss, but it is there for reference. But thank you guys so much for tuning in today. Make sure you leave a like and subscribe, as this video took a very long time, but let's not waste any more time as there's 44 bosses on this list that we have to get through. So here's every single boss in Hollow Knight Silksong ranked from easiest to hardest. Starting off our list at number 44 as the easiest boss in the game, of course, is the first boss, Moss Mother. This is a very simple introduction boss to the game. Moss Mother really only has one attack where she'll swoop down and try to swipe you as she flies by, but that's pretty much it. Outside of some falling rocks, there's really nothing that you have to worry about with this boss battle. I highly doubt that anyone really died to this boss. If you did, I'm sorry that I pointed you out, but yes, Moss Mother is extremely easy and extremely simple. Number 43, we have Fourth Chorus. This was a really fun and different boss battle. It's one of the few bosses in the entire game that actually has you fighting a boss that stays in the background. Your job is to simply dodge the lava by jumping from platform to platform and also dodging one of its 4 arm attacks. This just looks a lot harder than it is because his attacks are so incredibly telegraphed. There's a spark and at least a 1 to 2 second window before you actually need to move out the way, making this extremely easy. It's still a really fun boss as you fly up and knock down the rocks on top of its head, but it's a simple one. I didn't know if I should have included Kragler or not. Technically, he feels like a mini boss if anything, but you could say that for a couple of other bosses in this game, so why not? Let's throw him in this list. Kragler has one attack where he throws up on you. That's literally it. But it makes this the longest, most drug out, most tedious boss battle in the entire game. It's not necessarily difficult at all. All you have to do is hit it once or twice and then go hide. But if you get greedy, you are going to get destroyed by double damage, because double damage is all over this game with almost every boss attack. But yep, you just want to hit them, hide, and rinse and repeat, and this took me, no joke, about 6 to 7 minutes of just repeating this over and over and over again. Not hard, but definitely tedious. You might notice that yes, I had 3 deaths against Plasmified Zango, but that's just simply because when I found him, I did not have my needle leveled up to as high as it needed to be, and I didn't quite understand how this boss battle worked at first. I thought I just had to keep hitting him for minutes and minutes and minutes, and before I knew it, I was fighting him for about 15 to 20 minutes, no joke, until I looked it up. Oh yeah, I need to have a stronger needle in order to deal more damage as he heals himself when he attacks. Once I then leveled up the needle to its full potential, I found this to be an extremely easy boss fight. What makes it so easy is you can get like 3 to 4 hits in, and even if you do get hit, you can just dodge out of the way, go back to the beginning of the room, heal, and then go back into the fight. It's really not that difficult. Moving from very easy to easy bosses, we have number 40, Skull Tyrant. You fight Skull Tyrant twice in this game, and both times they're pretty simple. The only thing you really need to pay attention to is whether he's going to run at you or try to jump on top of you. Once you figure that out, you're pretty much good to go. Know your distance, know when to back up and when to attack, and you're going to be pretty set with this boss battle. I didn't find it to be too difficult and didn't die at all. Bell Beast was my first slight struggle of a boss battle in this game, which was kind of weird considering the fact that it's not that difficult at all. It's a very early boss battle, and I think it was just me getting used to the gameplay of Hollow Knight. I took about a couple of weeks break from playing the first game and jumping to this game, so I had to brush my skills off a little bit. Bell Beast has some pretty basic attacks where he'll run at you or jump over top of you, but the thing that kept hitting me the most were the bells. When the bells drop, they bounce in random directions, which could accidentally bounce into you if you're not paying attention. That was definitely the hardest part of this boss, but overall, it's very easy. Volt Verm is a very simplistic boss with its attacks. It really only has 2 types of attacks. It will fire vertical electrical rays at you, or send out electrical circles across the screen that you have to dodge. That's really about it. It reminded me a lot of the Dream supreme boss Elder Hu from the first game, where you just had to move out of the way at the right second in order to not take damage. As someone who really loves the movement in this game, this was really no issue for me. Once I figured out how this worked and it was just a big game of whack-a-mole from the ceiling, I was easily able to punch through this boss battle. Our friend and partner Garmon has now been corrupted by the Void. If you fought any of the Void corrupted enemies from Act 3, you'll probably be okay with this one, because that's what it feels like, just another Void corrupted enemy. He only has a couple of attacks, and the only one that ever dealt damage to me was the one where he shoots out tons of Void projectiles into the air. Once I learned where to jump and how to dodge those, I was perfectly okay with this boss battle, even though it did take me just a couple of tries of learning when to jump at the right time, but I truly do believe I could have done it on one try if I really just locked in more. The Pale Stag is one of those boss battles that's just frustrating to deal with. You're only going to be able to get off one or two attacks before it just runs off the screen and flies away, which is super frustrating. You're constantly chasing it around this entire room that's full of platforms, which makes it just a tedious boss altogether. But is it difficult? Not really, until the very end, where it starts having 5 or 6 projectiles flying at you at once. And it's only frustrating if you make it frustrating, because if you're constantly chasing them down blindly, you're gonna run into these projectiles. So you have to take the fight slow and wait for Pale Stag to get in a good location to you, and also that's not interfering with the projectiles that they're placing. Pale Stag rewards patience, and also probably projectiles. You should probably equip those. Next up, we have the disgraced chef Lugoli. Lugoli is just this big blob fly that likes to fling biowater goop at you. Yeah, if you know anything about biowater, it's not fun. And what happens is if you touch any of this goop, you get infested by maggots, which actually covers your health bar, preventing you from even healing. It quickly eats away at your silk, which means you have to quickly build your meter in order to fake heal, which just takes the maggots off, and then you have to build it up again just to get a heal off. So running into these things can be devastating, but thankfully they're placed in such positions it's really hard to actually even get hit by one of these. Believe it or not, the hardest part of this whole battle is of Lugoli flinging their butt at you. It's honestly the only attack that kept hitting me, and once you know how to look for that and when to expect it, you'll be good to go. It's really not that hard of a boss battle. Next up, we have Watcher at the Edge. This boss is very easy simply due to the lack of variety of attacks that he has. He only does 2 attacks, a triple swipe on the ground or a vertical uppercut into a vertical drop. It's the only things that he'll do, so once you realize this, even when he spawns onto you, he'll do one of these 2 attacks. All you have to do is just be patient. Jump in, get your couple attacks, back off, let him do his attack. It's really not that hard. Now, it does take a while to actually defeat him, simply due to the fact that you can only get a couple hits in at a time, or he'll block your attacks or immediately start swinging himself, and also if you back out of the way to heal for too long, he will spawn on top of you super quickly. But overall, it's the simplest and probably the easiest 1v1 sword duel in the game. Yet again, another post-game boss fight we have is the Unraveled. The battle starts off with you fighting a couple of silk-infested enemies before the main one pops up from the ground. Very similar to the Lost Garmin fight, he has one attack that's just very difficult for me to dodge all the time. It's one projectile attack where he'll actually shoot out a couple of enemies from his body. Besides that, the only other things that he'll do is try to rush into you, which is very easy to dodge. Second half, he also has these spears that come out of the ground and try to stab at you, but I mean, they almost actively try to miss you. They're so bad. I mean, I don't think I got hit by a single one. Once I learned how to dodge his one projectile attack, this was a breeze. Hunter's March is a brutal area in the game, with some absolutely brutal enemies as part of this ant clan. But Gur the Outcast is not one of them, unfortunately. He was pretty simple. Maybe that's the exact reason he's an outcast. But all he does is set down spike traps all over the stage. I mean, he doesn't even throw anything at you, and his only actual attack is him sliding across the floor at you. You can easily see where he's going to jump from, and all he does is jump out of the ground, throw some traps, and go back into the ground. And I don't think I ever even got hit by any of these traps. I just slowly walked out of the way when they were about to extend their spikes. So yeah, the only things they actually did was prevent me from hitting him when he got stunned. Yet again, another boss that just demands patience, and if you take your time and hit him when it's time, you're gonna absolutely have no problem with this one. Now we move from easy bosses to kind of tough bosses. Sister Splinter is one that I've read online that a lot of people had issues with, but I really didn't. I mean, I didn't even die one time, and once I learned the kind of attack pattern, the only thing that got frustrating wasn't even the vines that it shot down or its swipe attacks. It's something else that this game does a lot to greatly increase boss difficulty, and it's filling a room with minion enemies. This greatly increases the difficulty of a boss by flooding a room with multiple obstacles. Now you have to dodge the vines and also these enemies, while also dodging the attacks from Sister Splinter herself. Now thankfully Sister Splinter can actually hit her own minions and destroy them, which makes things a whole lot easier. But even with that said, I still wouldn't categorize this as a quote-unquote hard boss. Moss Mother is back, but this time there's two of them, and you have to battle them at the same time, which once again, when there's multiple enemies and two bosses on the screen at once, this greatly increases the difficulty. But thankfully the enemy spawns here aren't too much of a hassle, as they simply just crawl slowly across the floor, but you have to watch out for falling rocks, alternating swipes between the two Moss Mothers, and of course the minions crawling across the floor. Thankfully, Moss Mother herself is still an incredibly simple boss battle with only one real attack besides dropping some rocks as a second alternative, so that makes this still a pretty simple boss battle, but it's right in the middle still at just kind of tough. Brood Mother is another mother with enemy spawns. In fact, before you even fight the boss, you have to go through a small enemy gauntlet against a bunch of stinky flies. Now, Brood Mother doesn't do anything exceptional, and in fact, that's the reason why she's a little tough, simply due to the fact that she just does random things. She just will randomly flop her body around the stage, or randomly just dive at Hornet out of nowhere, and of course, there's enemy spawns. Brood Mother can spawn little flies that you can take out in just a couple of hits, or weird goop that can trap you to the ground, making you vulnerable for hits when she's flopping around the room. This definitely feels like a slight step up in difficulty, but once again, just kind of tough. These small conch fly enemies in the game are some of the most annoying, so how about a boss battle against two big ones that pretty much do the same things, if not more. These guys will fly in and out of the ceiling, the floor, and both left and right walls, while also firing projectiles at you. These shell projectiles, just like the enemies in this area, can bounce off of the walls up to 3 to 4 times. So as projectiles are bouncing around the room, you also have these giant conch flies that are flying in and out of the floor and the ceiling, which is just a lot of chaos going on. The battle ends once you defeat one of them, which means you have to take out most of your attacks on one specific one, and it's kind of hard and almost impossible to track them down every single time. So odds are you're just going to have to randomly attack them both until one of them eventually kicks the bucket. But overall, it is kind of a frustrating boss and can be difficult at times when shells are just flying around the room. Phantom was a hard one for me to place because I just couldn't remember the fight that much. I actually had to go back and watch a lot of my gameplay to see exactly how this fight operated, and I think it doesn't stand out that much compared to the other sword 1v1 duels. To me, it just felt like an easier, lesser version of the Lace fights, simply due to the fact that all of Phantom's attacks are very, very telegraphed. When she goes to throw her needle, it's very, very slow, and it doesn't really have any type of impact once she lands. She does have a second phase attack where she'll come shooting down from the ceiling, but it's nothing too difficult. By this point in the game, you'll have the dash. If you were like me at all, you could have also had the dash charm equipped, which means you were way too fast for any of her attacks and for any of her counters to hit you. Seriously, I would just randomly swing at her, and even if she countered, I could easily just jump out of the way or just run out of the way. Which leads me to the first fight with Lace, which I do believe to be still a harder version than what Phantom offered. Most of Lace's attacks did not feel very telegraphed, and there was very little to no time to dodge out of the way, and with it being this early in the game, you don't have a sprint, and you really don't have anything to jump out of the way like a double jump. This slow movement at the beginning of the game makes the battle itself a lot harder than it should be. Just like Phantom, there's a second phase where Lace will spawn these energy circles where she'll have a super attack in them. All you have to do is dash out of the way, but you also have to be very careful on the stage to not fall into the lava on the sides. Another attack that makes me think that she is harder of a boss battle than Phantom is Phantom has one attack where she slowly throws her needle, where Lace has an attack where she'll quickly rise up in the air and drop, and it has little to no lag. I may have only died to Lace one time, but still, I definitely recognized her to be a little bit more difficult than Phantom later on in this game. Father of the Flame is a really fun boss fight for me, and I just commend it for being a completely different style of fight. Now, a lot of people might hate this simply due to the fact that you have to learn how to parry really well for this fight. Thankfully, I knew how to parry right away with pretty much any crest, even though my crest of choice was always the Reaper. This allowed me to have precision downward swipe so I can easily take out all of its branches and easily platform across the balloons. So if you're good with platforming and pogoing in this game, you're not going to have a issue with phase 1. It's when phase 2, after you take out all the branches, is when you really start to see this boss battle take hold. You now have to bounce on one of the 2 balloons in order to take out its core towards the middle, and the only way to do so is to jump up, take a couple of hits, and dodge out of the way because it has a super flame attack, which is very difficult to dodge sometimes. The flames sometimes can have just straight up a mind of their own where they'll decide to fly into you, and it's just a lot of RNG that you have to look out for. Now, if for some reason you're not wearing the fire protective charm in this area, which I highly recommend you do, you're going to take 2 hits of damage every flame. But with this charm, it reduces your damage down to 1 mask, which is greatly appreciated. Next up, we have Bell Eater. Now, you can attack Bell Eater one of 2 ways, either hitting its head or hitting its butt. I hope that's a butt. Now, if you solely focus on hitting the butt, I feel like you're going to have an easier time. All you have to do is really look out for the projectiles that the butt shoots out. It's essentially just a harder version of the Bell Beast with some new attacks as well. He'll horizontally come across the stage where you have to bounce off of him or decide to just float towards the top. But for me, I just had to learn the pattern of where the projectiles flew out from his butt, and once I got that down, it was a breeze. I was quickly able to maneuver left and right in order to dodge these to take him out. So it's not incredibly tough, it just takes some time to learn its patterns. Now it's time for everyone's favorite bug, Trobio. All of Trobio's attacks can be somewhat frustrating. One attack that he has is he throws these bouncy balls that emits lasers after they explode, but the one attack that kept getting me was the tornado spin that Trobio would do. It was always so random and was so quick and I couldn't dodge it in time. Now there's other moves that definitely look a lot more hectic. For instance, he'll have fireworks that explodes or streamers that are shooting lasers out of the ground, but these weren't really an issue for me. I could always see where they were coming from and they were pretty well telegraphed and gave me good signals as to where to move and when to move. It was that dang tornado move. I can definitely see Trobio being a lot harder for others and maybe even officially moving into that hard category, but for me it still was only kind of tough and I didn't even die to him. The conch fly has returned, but this time it's only one of them, the raging conch fly. It's the second one that you weren't able to defeat from the first fight, and the reason why I believe this fight to be harder is mostly because of the stage. The stage is incredibly skinny. It's almost as if you're fighting in a small hallway, but raging conch fly is able to shoot 2 shell projectiles at you, which can bounce off the walls all at once, which is very frustrating, and moves in and out of the stage very quickly. But of course it can spawn minions, because why not? And they quickly fly across the screen just as quickly as he does. Yep, there's a lot of things to look out for, and this could have easily shifted up to hard for me, but still I feel like it was right on the edge and didn't quite make the cut in that category. We now move on from our kind of tough category to our hard bosses. These are bosses that I believe to be pretty difficult within Silksong, with the first one in this category being Cogwork Dancers. They don't do anything that's extremely difficult. In fact, all they do is move around the stage, but it's this action that actually can make this pretty hard because they can increase their speed at which they move and also eventually moving in desynced patterns, meaning one moves at a different time than the other, meaning you have to constantly keep your eyes on both of the Cogwork Dancers, making you look like SpongeBob from that one episode. The first couple of tries, they really beat me up. One of the hardest parts is that when they land, they actually swipe their blades on both the left and right sides, which means their hitbox is actually a lot bigger than you think when they're landing. So not only do you have to pay attention as to where they're going, but also where they're landing in relative position of you. There's also special moves where they'll fill the screen with lines that you have to dodge and also come together in the middle of the screen in order to have a shockwave appear. After you defeat one, the other will fight you extremely slowly, and as bad as I want to feel for this thing and the story behind this whole boss battle, I couldn't care because this boss was actually pretty frustrating for me. This leads us to the real dancers, the Clover Dancers. Now, this is obviously very similar to the first fight, and the only reason why I think it's a little bit harder, even though I only died once, is simply due to the fact that they have faster attacks and one crazy whirlwind move where you have to jump around them clockwise or counterclockwise. Now, the reason why I was able to do a lot better with this fight is simply due to the fact that I remembered how to actually work this fight from the first time. But now back with a stronger needle, more charms, and better moves, this wasn't too bad for me, but I can still see it being definitely more difficult than the first time. And there's even moves that they'll double up on, like there's a special one where they leave lines all over the screen. They might might do 2 of them instead of just 1. This could definitely be a hard boss fight for sure. I was actually very surprised that Crust King Khan wasn't a lot more harder than it should have been, compared to the other bosses that we had to take their hearts from. Trust me when I say I still think it was hard, but nothing compared to the others. First off, you must go through a mini enemy gauntlet every single time you want to fight this boss, which can be very frustrating. But Khan himself has very telegraphed attacks, where you can see a pillar of dirt coming out of the walls or the floors or the ceilings before the spire of needles actually sticks out. Now what prevents this from being a lot harder is that Khan doesn't have any physical attacks himself. He won't swipe at you, he won't even punch you if you're standing right beside him, he won't even react to you. Instead, all he wants to do is spawn needles, whether it be projectiles shooting from the ceiling or giant needle pillars extruding from the walls. It's a beautiful looking boss fight and still a fun engaging one, but if you keep your concentration on everything that's moving around the room, you won't take too much damage from this boss. What? Grandmother Silk, the first final boss of this game, being at number 19? Yeah, Grandmother Silk wasn't that difficult. In fact, I was truly surprised when I did beat her. I was like, whoa, this is it? I knew, of course, from playing the first game that there was going to be another true final boss, but still, I couldn't believe how easy this was. Let me actually state that this boss isn't easy. It definitely can be in a hard category. It does very similar attacks to other bosses in this game, including the other Weavers. For instance, this reminds me a lot of the first Sinner boss battle, but personally, I thought that boss was way harder than this. Spoiler alert, I guess. But Grandmother Silk didn't have too many crazy attacks. The one special attack that she would use is her sewing needles, where she'll either drop them on you vertically or throw them across the screen horizontally, while also occasionally raising spikes from the floor or causing rocks to fall. There wasn't much to look out for. I mean, yes, I can see this boss tripping up the casual gamer, but if you're a seasoned veteran, this is a final boss that's not going to trip you up all too much. The only massive attack that she has is one where she'll actually grab you with Silk, take you to a separate room, and actually deal 3 massive damage, which is pretty significant, but it's an easy attack to dodge. To me, Morrowind is one of the big 3. And by big 3, I'm talking about the big 3 bosses that I've seen people having troubles with online. In fact, Morrowind was so difficult for some, Team Cherry had to actually send out a patch later on, about a week later, making the first couple of bosses in the game a little easier, including Morrowind. Now, unfortunately, I found and fought Morrowind well before the patch was actually included, so I had to struggle through some of the craziest attacks that I've seen from an early game boss. Morrowind only has a couple of attacks that are truly devastating, and it's really the blades that you have to look out for. Around phase 2, these blades will start to spin around the screen and actually start targeting you in weird ways. It's really hard to figure out how they're moving, and their movement is just very unpredictable. The saws will loop and return and bend in weird ways, and it's just very frustrating. Now, I only died 3 times to Morrowind, but with that said, I feel like it should have been more, because I don't know, it was one of those instances where I feel like I just got lucky and beat the boss sooner than I should have. But even approaching Morrowind to land an attack is sometimes extremely risky, because he can counter you with a claw swipe or just rush into you when you're not paying attention, which is another way I got hit, is from him rushing into the screen when he's off the screen. It's just kind of frustrating, but it wasn't anything that truly made me want to pull my hair out. Shrine Guardian Seth is a very interesting boss, and one thing that you may or may not know is that this boss was a tribute to Seth Goldman, a fan who passed away from Ewing sarcoma, a type of cancer, and Team Cherry actually collaborated with him before his death to bring his character's art design to life, which is just incredibly awesome of Team Cherry. He's actually done with some justice in this game, as well as he's not a pushover. This boss fight can be very difficult. It's another one of those 1v1 duels where you don't get a lot of opportunities to attack. Also considering the fact that Seth has a symbol that he uses for a shield, which means most of your attacks won't even land. What also makes this boss fight particularly difficult is the fact that you're fighting Seth in what is essentially just one long hallway. It gives you room to run out of the way and heal real quick, but he'll quickly spawn on top of you and crash down with a booming explosion of his symbol. This was definitely one of the more difficult 1v1 sword duels in the game, just because of the symbol alone, from it crashing down and causing shockwaves and not knowing when he's going to attack, him chaining multiple attacks together one after the other, and also just flinging the symbol around like a frisbee boomerang. There's so much variety in his attacks where he's constantly keeping you on your toes, wondering what the heck he's going to hit you with next. Widow was my first real struggle with a boss in this game, but also at the same time, one of my favorite fights and definitely one of my favorite Weaver battles. Phase 1 against Widow is pretty casual. It will swipe at you, run across the screen, and occasionally throw a bell or something. But it's Phase 2 where the speed of Widow goes absolutely berserk. She starts flinging bells left and right, dropping them from the sky, raising them from the ground that you have to dodge, and even swiping you as these things are all going on while running across the screen really fast. So you're constantly going to have to keep your eyes on everything else that's going on and not just Widow herself. But once again, this was an extremely engaging and fun fight, but definitely a difficult one as it put up my highest number of deaths so far on this list being 5. And oh yeah, I forgot to mention there's technically a third phase where Widow moves even faster, so yeah, this boss battle can get completely hectic. Now, Four Brothers, Cygnus, and Gran is going to be the first example of situations where I just kind of played out of my mind and just got very lucky, because I have 0 deaths against these guys, but that doesn't mean this wasn't difficult. I was on the brink of death multiple times, but having the double heal charm is without a doubt a lifesaver in this game. I highly recommend you using it. But Phase 1 will only have you fighting one of the brothers, but the catch here is there's tons of minions that spawn, including the annoying ones that throw fire bombs at you from the sky. Not to mention there's 2 lava falls, one on each side of the stage, so yeah, you're kind of fenced in here. Now, the lava proof charm is something that you absolutely are going to need here, because almost every single attack from almost every enemy on the screen has some sort of fire effect. And that also goes for the second brother when he jumps in to help as well. So yeah, that's going to do double damage if you don't have a charm equipped. Well, the bosses still, regardless, are going to do double damage to you. Being literally cornered in a small battle arena on a 2v1 with lava falls on both sides really just shows how annoying this fight can be. It literally feels like you're getting jumped at times from the minions and the brothers themselves, but I was luckily able to pull away without dying a single time, once again thanks to quick healing. But I can see this boss being an absolute pain in the butt for other players. Oh yeah, I forgot to mention there's a third lava fall that will actually fall from the middle of the stage as well. Crawlfather is another boss that I felt like I was able to escape, thankfully with no deaths, because oh my gosh, this boss can be hectic as heck, very similar to the Four Brothers. Crawlfather relies on tons of minions to help him fight, from small ones to big ones to the stupid annoying ones that throw the stupid needles at you. So much of the fight is you trying to take out all the minions while also trying to take out Crawlfather, and he has some crazy attacks of himself, randomly pecking at you as he's going across the stage, or just dropping down from the sky randomly, or even firing chains across the entirety of the stage. He's constantly keeping you moving, and unlike the Four Brothers where the minions are pretty easy to take out, these minions are frustrating and an absolute pain in the butt, and the main reason why this boss is so hard in the first place. We now move from the hard category on to the very hard category. There's only a handful of bosses that I can say I really disliked in this game, and Pinstress is definitely one of them. Oh my gosh, this boss fight is so annoying. Pinstress's main way of attacking is simply just chucking projectiles at you while floating high up into the sky, which means half of the time it's almost impossible to land an attack. And there's even attacks that she'll have if you get too close, she'll hit you for a 2-mask. After dying 3 times, I felt like I had to really change something up with my loadout, and it's one of the first bosses in the game I actually had to do this with. The best method I found was to leave needle traps up in the sky and also throw javelin needles at her and try to knock her down, because she just kept floating up there, and the more you jumped after her, she'd float even farther away. There's nothing that I hate more than an enemy or boss that throws projectiles in groups of 3 or 4. I absolutely hate that, and yeah, this is why. Pinstress was without a doubt one of the hardest bosses for me in this game. We now have the second Lace fight, which is towards the very end of Act 2. Now, Lace was an actual threat in this fight, and it actually took me 5 tries to take her down. She's just very unpredictable in this fight. Now, there is a little cheesing that you can do in her first phase where you can constantly bounce off of her head, where she will move the same exact way, swinging up, swinging down, swinging up, swinging down. So thankfully that makes that first phase a lot easier, but it's when you start getting to the later phases, she starts schmoving around the stage. She will spawn tons of energy circles that will explode, constantly countering, which will be punishing if you're not moving out of the way quick enough if you hit her counter, but constantly flipping up in the air, flipping down, and just moving super fast with very little lag to her attacks. Even after I defeated her, I feel like I just barely got away with my life. I had like literally 1 mask left when I was at the very end. end. So yeah, this is 100% a boss that I would say was very hard for me. We are now down to the final 10, and at number 10 we have Second Sentinel. I died 2 times, and once again one of those that I felt like I really just got out of there with my life, because Second Sentinel has combined attacks it felt like from multiple different bosses. This was one of the hardest 1v1 sword duels with me, and I had to learn to fight with elegance and grace. If I got too cocky and tried to attack too much, I instantly got obliterated by weird rising attacks or dropping down from the sky, so I had to get my licks in when I could and learn when to back away or try to counter his attacks. From sky attacks, ground combos, and even projectiles and special attacks, yep, Second Sentinel pretty much has them all. But I think my biggest issue was just the room. I didn't like this room to battle him in. I just felt like it was pretty small and the lighting was very strange as it was only lit from the center of the room, making the edges pretty dark and just strange to see where he's at sometimes. Next up, we have Savage Beastfly number 2. This is the second time, unfortunately, that we had to encounter this beast, and also what I would call one of the big 3, the one that people are having lots of issues with online. Now on paper, this should be way harder than the first time you fight him, simply due to the fact that you're fighting on lava and lowering platforms that can break apart as well. So how in the world is this technically easier than the first version? Well, it's simply due to the fact that I have more techniques here. I know it's a little strange to judge this boss based on where I was in the game rather than just how hard it is compared to the other one, but that's what I'm gonna do. Sue me. Once again, the main problem with this boss is just enemies spawning all over the place as you're trying to fight him and dodge the lava as well. What I learned that helped extremely quickly was simply just using Threadstorm that would kill all the enemies that spawned around me. Using that special attack on any enemy that popped onto the stage made the boss over before I knew it, and thankfully with my improved needle skills and power and all my other skills and charms that I have equipped, I made this boss a lot easier than it should have been, but man, it took me a while to figure out that special attack was just so goated for this. Thankfully, I only died twice to Nihilith, the second of the 3 heart commanders that we had to take out, and oh my gosh, this boss fight can be so insane. It's actually one of the craziest boss fights I think I've played out of both 1 and 2, simply because of what this boss does in Phase 2. Where it completely breaks the floor, meaning you have to fight the boss the entire time hanging onto the wall and continuously jumping up unless you got the charm where you can stick to the wall. And yes, only one wall is able to be jumped on, as the one that Nihilith is on is covered in spikes. On top of that, Nihilith can have full area attacks where you'll quickly need to dash or even grapple to the second side of the stage so that way you don't take damage. From spike balls shooting up from the floor and acid projectiles that Nihilith will fire at you, and the fact that you have to actually go to her and pogo off of her head just to deal damage, this boss fight is freaking insane, and I cannot believe it I did it on my 3rd try. Oh boy, the pain in the butt for the entire community, Savage Beastfly, the first one that is. This is now the highest amount of deaths I've had of any boss on this list so far, coming in at 7 deaths. This boss battle is so difficult simply due to the fact that it's one of the first that you'll encounter in this game. You don't have to fight it first, which could change the outlook for a lot of people on the placement of this boss, but the fact that most of us did fight it earlier on in the game and found it earlier on in the game, yeah, odds are you struggled hard with this one. Savage Beastfly does 2 massive damage with every single attack, not to mention fills the screen full of different minions that takes a while to kill because you are still extremely weak, with Silk Spear being your only special ability right now. And you're not going to be using it because you're desperately going to be trying to heal during this fight. Now from what I've seen online, having 7 deaths really didn't seem to be that bad compared to what others went through, but man, this was like a straight up, whoa, is this what the rest of the game is going to be like when I first played? Thankfully, no, not necessarily, but man, this will definitely go down as one of the hardest opening bosses in a game ever. And once again, I had to suffer through this boss before they included that patch, making the earlier bosses a little easier. Lord knows I am dreading seeing what they're going to do with this boss in Godhome. Knowing them, probably fill the room with 2 of them. And the last of the big 3 that I've seen a lot of people have troubles with online is Last Judge. Last Judge is absolutely no joke, and one of the biggest reasons people hate this boss is the unbelievable run back that you have to do in order to get here. It's just not fun. But overall, this boss has some pretty powerful attacks, where pretty much every single thing it does 2 massive damage. Phase 2 has Last Judge doing tons of explosive and fire attacks, which constantly will have you weaving in and out of the flames and just running to the other side of the stage, jumping at the last second to dodge flames on the floor, and just constantly fearing for your life what's next. As this was the last boss before entering Act 2, it really did feel like the true final boss of Act 1, really being like this huge obstacle that I had to get past. Now, as I imagine myself refighting this boss, I don't think it's going to be anywhere near as difficult as it was the first time, but man, that first time, it truly was a testament to how hard this game could get. Not to mention, a lot of people finally got to the end and exploded from the final explosion of the boss, which I knew better and I immediately jumped into the corner right away because I do not trust these games at all. We are now down to the final 5 hardest bosses in the game, and it had to be a pure act of God for me to not die a single time against First Sinner. This boss battle is freaking insane, and without a doubt is one of my favorites in the entire game. It is pure adrenaline, pure rush when it comes to fighting this boss, and man, I did not expect it. There's like 3 total phases of this boss fight, and the only thing that changes is the magnitude of the attacks and also the speed of them as well. First Sinner also has the ability to heal herself, and it's unlike anything that we've seen from any boss in the entire Hollow Knight series, where you have to constantly rush to her to prevent her from healing. But a lot of the time she's healing, there's also needles stabbing at you from the ceiling, from the sides of the stage, so you're constantly dodging a barrage of her attacks while also trying to chase her down and stop her from healing, or just trying to dodge her attacks as well, as she'll swipe at you running across the stage or drop down from the sky on top of you. But oh boy, Phase 3 was freaking nuts. She's constantly healing, swiping across the stage, chucking groups of needles at you. I mean, the speed of her attacks is quite insane. She'll even develop some of the special abilities like having energy circles appear, very similar to Lace and Phantom, but she's just constantly keeping you on your toes. There's not a single second in this battle where you can decide to just stop moving. And if you're going to heal, you're probably going to have to stop and heal when she's moving. I think I'm just really good at being on my toes and having quick hand-eye coordination with these type of fights. Looking back on this, there's no reason in the world I should have been able to beat it as quickly as I did. And it's without a doubt one of the hardest bosses in this game just from watching. I'm like, oh my goodness. Number 4 is a boss that brings a new meaning to pain and misery. Possibly one of the most insane runbacks in any boss battle ever. It's so bad I genuinely have to talk about it as part of the boss because it just makes the experience so much harder. Bile Water is an area full of maggot water, and very similar to the disgraced Chef Lugoli, if you drop into the water, your health bar gets full of maggots, which means you really can't heal. So you have to get all the way back to the boss room without jumping in the water, which can sometimes take up to 3 to 4 minutes just to get all the way back. Now, you can find an easier bench, which is very well hidden, which drops the time down a couple of minutes or so, but still, it's a very tedious and frustrating run back to the most highest degree. But what about the battle itself? Well, you still don't fight the boss as soon as you get there. You have to fight an onslaught of his most annoying minions of all time. Of course, with 2 little platforms that stand above the goop soup down there. Finally, after all that, you can fight Grohl the freaking worst. Grohl does everything in his power to get you to step into that maggot water, and it's so frustrating. He'll randomly dive into the water and splash out as well. He'll also try to inhale you, which can cause you to be pulled into the water, and if you're trying to dash out of the way when he stops inhaling, you can fling yourself into the water. It's just so annoying. Now, there is a cheese way that I've seen online where you can just sit in the water down at the bottom right and nothing will hit you really. But screw that. I didn't even find that advice when I first started playing this game. But Grohl will also develop an ability where he'll just start blasting lasers out of his mouth at you because sure. And of course his minions can jump out of the goop soup and hit you as well. But what makes this so frustrating is just trying to attack him while also dodging the water. It's just so hard because he's flying or floating over a path that doesn't have any land for you to jump on. So a lot of the time you're chasing him across the stage, trying to hit him once or twice before he starts firing attacks at you, and then before you know it, he dives back into the water. This fight, oh my gosh, super annoying. I can't believe I didn't die more than I did. Now for a boss that I actually had a more enjoyable time with, even though that I thought he was a lot harder, which is Tormented Trobio. He pulls out all the stops this time around, where all of his projectiles have massive laser range, everything that he does has a trail of explosions behind him, and that tornado attack is faster and more annoying than ever. Once you start getting well into the fight, the stage will start giving you seizures, as everything he does just explodes explodes. There's beams shooting out from the floor, explosive circles circling all around the stage, and of course, his tornadoes even leave trails of explosions and fireworks as well. And his bouncy balls this time are actually an extreme nuisance to deal with. Once again, I thought the boss fight was still a lot of fun and definitely keeps you on your toes. And this boss fight always reminds me of the final version of Zote that you fight in the first game. Thankfully, still, in my opinion, not as hard as that boss, but yeah, it can get very hectic and chaotic. Now, the runner-up for the hardest boss in the game being Lost Lace. This is the true final boss of the game and is my highest death count yet at 8 deaths, but still not the most that I've had in this game. Lost Lace has very similar attacks to her other versions, but also having void attacks as well, shooting out projectiles which will turn into blades on the ground, shooting out a giant void vine arm out of herself, or just moving super quickly around the stage with a really good and fast counter this time. But her void attacks are pretty suppressed until around phase 2, where she starts shooting them out in everything she does. When it comes to landing attacks on Lost Lace, it's just very frustrating because a lot of the time she's blocking your attacks, countering them, or just dashing and disappearing into the void down below. But the final phase is where she starts just going crazy, shooting void attacks all over the stage, special attacks boosting and booming everywhere, her void attacks actually blending in with the foreground and background, making it really hard to see what's happening at times, and just trying to stay alive is a task with this boss battle. I had to constantly keep running around the room, healing at the last second. This obviously, without a doubt, was the hardest 1v1 sword duel in the entire game, and I'm talking constantly kept me on my toes with random attacks and random movement patterns. Now, compared to Grandmother Silk, this definitely was the test that I was prepared and waiting for this entire time. But with a whopping 12 deaths, the hardest boss for me, without a doubt, with no hesitation in this game, was Scar Singer Carmelita. We know Hunter's Marsh and the ants was a very difficult part of this game. Some of these ant soldiers and that mini-boss were very difficult. So what better way to start a battle with the Ant Queen than just to battle tons of the ant army before you actually have to fight her, including 2 brand new ant soldiers that we never see throughout the main part of the game. But Carmelita was the first boss in this entire game and the only boss in this entire game that genuinely made me rage. I was so frustrated and angry with this fight. Every attack that she does is so quick with so little lag, you hardly have any time to get out the way. Her shock realms are super annoying, and you have to memorize her patterns of how she throws them based on her positioning of her arms and where she's at on the stage or in the air. Imagine Morwing's blades, but on crack. Now, it's not just her shock realms, it's the fact that she's just so incredibly fast. She has moves where she'll dash across the stage and leave a trail of giant spikes that you have to double jump over, and then she'll eventually start chucking out double of all of her attacks, and that goes for the shock realms as well. This boss was very dependent on how well you can read signals. You had to very closely watch her and watch every type of position, pose, or move that she did, so that way you can be prepared for what she's about to throw out at you. I don't think there were many bosses in this game that reached the level of difficulty that some of the first games did. For instance, like Nightmare Grim, or the True Vessel, or the God Home version of Groat, or even True Radiance. But Carmelita, without a doubt, was my toughest boss battle in the entire game of Hollow Knight Silksong. Thank you guys so much for tuning in today. If you enjoyed this list, make sure you leave a like and subscribe, and comment down below if you agree or disagree with some or all of my picks. Thank you so much. This video took a very long time to make, so once again, leave a like and subscribe if you want to see more videos like this. Maybe once all the DLC releases for Silksong, I will do one massive boss ranking with both of the games. But until then, thank you guys so much and have a blessed day. See you guys.